Oh, come on, Jesus Christ! How's everybody doing? London, how are you? That's really weak. New York is much louder than this. Some of these people have been stroke. Wait, hang on a second. How you doing, London?
Bye.
I can't. Hey guys, welcome to Cup of Joe. Have any of you been to a Cup of Joe that I've done in the past in any of the various locations? Nobody? Oh, wait, one person. Okay. Alright, so let me, a quick explanation about what Cup of Joe is. When I was breaking into comics and struggling to find just the right way to break in, I always wish I'd had the opportunity to talk to the person that was running Marvel, the person that was running DC, the person that was running Dark Horse, anybody with some real knowledge about how to break into comics and about the business of comics. But obviously that opportunity wasn't going to arise for a complete unknown. But I always vowed that if I ever had the opportunity, I would try to give back that sort of feedback to anyone who asked. And as editor-in-chief of Marvel and chief creative officer of Marvel, it's very, very hard to have one-on-one with people. So years ago, I started this Cup of Joe panels, which basically amount to a catch-all to talk about anything you want to talk about comics, politics, fashion, love advice, anything you need. I'm here for you. But these panels have started to grow over the years, and then we've had lots of guests come in and join me. So we got a bunch of guests today that are here, and usually we also start Cup of Joe with a slide presentation about stuff that Marvel's doing. And but this year you guys get off easy, and there is no slide presentation, so we're not going to shill. We're just going to talk comics. But the other thing to tell you about Cup of Joe is these panels are only as good as you guys are, because it's an open Q&A. So if you guys want to talk, we talk. If there's no questions, hell, we go to the pub early, right? We're around. So
we just spent the last 2 hours in the pub.
I'm praying for no questions. But anyway, folks, Mr. Mark Miller is joining me here. Chester Braun, C.B. Sobolski.
Go for a pee. I'm genuinely bursting. Like, I don't know if this seems unprofessional. I've just been in the pub for a couple of hours. I've started drinking water. It's going to get horrible if I don't do something. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
I've been in the pub for a couple of hours and I haven't eaten yet. So this is what I'm giving up. These sandwiches.
So hey guys, welcome and thank you for showing up to the Cup of Joe. So we're just going to get right into it. Who is the first brave soul who might have a question? And is there a microphone? So we walk around with a microphone, or we're just going to have people scream? Okay, I guess we can have people scream. All right, yes sir, right here. Yep.
Hey John, Stan Lee obviously being the man who gets to be in all of his films. When are we going to see you? And what's going to be your cameo?
No cameos from me. No cameos from me. That is absolutely Stanley's gig. And I don't think anybody wants to see me on film, really, at the end of the day. I had my taste with some Kevin Smith movies, and that's cool. But listen, there's only one Stan Lee, and he's earned that right to be in every single one of our movies as often as possible. It's hysterical, because you watch these Marvel movies, and it doesn't matter where you are. Whenever he shows up, the audience starts to clap. It just doesn't matter, because he's Stan, and you gotta love him. So, let's see. Yeah, okay, God, how are we going to do this? I can't see. All right, let's see. Way in the back over there, yes. Yeah, you can just turn around, yeah. And you, that's okay, you and then the person behind you. So.
Can you all, each of the panel, tell us what you think is going to be interesting about digital comics in the next couple of years? What things you're interested in seeing? What things you're actually interested in doing yourself, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been following what Marvel's been doing over the last several months, we launched an initiative called the Infinite Comic, which is a format of digital storytelling, which I think, to me, is really what the future of digital story. In the purest sense of a comic, it's not a motion comic, it's not animation. Something that keeps the purity of the comic while at the same time using the tools that can be applied with the digital world. The Infinite Comic, I think, is the perfect tablet comic. If you haven't checked it out, please do. If you get ADX #1, you'll see there's a code there. If not, you can purchase it for 99 cents. But I really do think that that's the future of how we will be telling stories. If the comics community still has a desire for reading comic books the way the comic books should be written, which is panel by panel, caption by caption, balloon by balloon, where you still control the timing. Instead of the turn of the page, it's a tap on the screen and things will be revealed. So that to me is really one of the most exciting things. The other aspect to me that's really exciting about digital is the fact, and I'm going to speak more domestically with respect to the U.S., just using us as an example. We have a ravenous culture, just like you guys are sure ravenous for the material that all your favorite companies produce. Most of us have a local comic shop that we go to and we purchase our books on that weekly basis, or they hold books for us and we get them when we get the opportunity to pick them up. But there are so many people in the United States that would want the content, would love the content if they had a chance to get it, but they live hundreds of miles away from a shop. The digital world is now going to allow us to have our content reach out to those people that can't get it normally, or just find it too inconvenient. I mean, let's face it, it's not in the States when we get our books on a Wednesday, and we all show up on a Wednesday to pick up those books, and we can't, that's a very unusual shopping habit. And I can't think of anything that I buy where I have to be at the store at the exact same day, the exact same time, to pick up that one product.
Laundry?
Huh?
Your laundry?
Laundry's not the only thing, but that can't speak for everybody. But laundry and maybe the supermarket. But at the end of the day, you don't go to the supermarket exactly the same. Depending on your life schedule. But for something like a casual product, product like comics, it's unheard of. So I think it's going to change a lot of the shopping habits. I can even see the digital comic world changing when you get the comics. They don't necessarily have to come out on a Wednesday. They don't necessarily have to come out monthly. They can come out weekly. You just don't know. Lots of things will be changing. It's going to be in flux. I mean, Mark, any feelings about digital?
Well, I love the idea of catering to the iPad audience, but what about the Nokia £20 audience? Marvel, when are you going to give us some for our cheap little phones?
Coming.
It's just text. It's just text.
I don't know, it's sort of funny. When I grew up in Stafford, which is like a small, average Midlands town, apparently now actually does have a comic shop. But when I grew up, it certainly didn't have a comic shop. So when I actually see digital, I genuinely think, I didn't read comics as a teenager because basically comics were not available where I lived. So for me, that's what digital feels like, the idea that I would at least have known somebody with an iPad. And I had someone stolen off them and kept it, because that's how Stafford works. That level of accessibility and the idea that the way that the market can actually respond to actually comics being out. I mean, this is one of the things that if you talk to writers, you get people tweeting at you on Wednesday, oh, I went to the shop and I couldn't get one of your comics, it must have sold out. And they sort of expect you to be happy. And actual fact, it means the shop didn't order enough and there was more demand, and that's money we're not getting. So it's actually the most depressive thing in the world. With digital, that's kind of not there, but that's a really boring economic reason, the idea that if you want to buy it, you can buy it. The basic functionality, to be honest, the possibilities of the form are exciting as well. But the chance to be able to buy a comic whenever they want, wherever they want, that excites me. Yeah, that's exciting.
Okay, Sir Becker, yeah.
Right.
We got a mic, great.
Right, yes, just as a follow-up to the first question on cameos, although I don't think you've had a cameo in a Marvel movie, I do remember in the Daredevil movie there was a character called Jose Quesada who was very gruesomely killed.
Yes.
So that may be a starry moment. But my main question is, 2 or 3 years on, what have you found to have been the relationship editorially and in a creative sense with Disney Corporation, and even in terms of potential character crossovers?
The relationship has been exactly what Disney promised us before we merged with them, which was we have autonomy. It's a double-edged sword, but both edges are the ones that are really to our liking and suitable to both companies. What the merger with Disney has given us is the autonomy to be Marvel, and when you look at it, that only makes sense. They looked at Marvel as an entity that they felt was worth purchasing because of what it was that Marvel was bringing to the table, and an audience that we were attracting that Disney has traditionally had trouble attracting, which is generally a male-centric audience. So it's a plus on that side, which is basically they said, you know what, we're purchasing you guys. We love the team that's in place. Just do what you do. This is what we want. You know, they didn't purchase us to say, okay, now that we've got you, we're going to insert our guys in here and do it the Disney way. Because at the end of the day, that's just not really what they spent their money on. The other wonderful thing about it is that now what they offer us is, okay, now that you're part of the Disney family has all this muscle, especially internationally, which Marvel did not have. Now we can leverage the Disney muscle and the Disney power all over the world as much as we need to in order to get the Marvel message across. So it's been a really win-win for us. But to me, more importantly, I am so happy at the fact that they're so pleased with the way that Marvel runs its business that they just let us be. They just let us be and do, you know, look, when the merger came out, the news of the merger came out, how many people on the internet were crying, oh my God, it's going to soften Marvel Comics, oh, what's going to happen to Wolverine's claws, and all this sort of stuff, right? Just a standard internet panic. And I'm sitting there going, folks, relax, just relax. You know, think about this sensibly. It doesn't, you know, it's not going to happen. And here we are. Nothing has changed at Marvel except that our reach now is really starting to become global. Not only that, we're now part of a television network, right? We're doing animation in the States on Disney XD. We now have an animation studio that we are building. We actually have a building that is an animation studio, Marvel Animation. We never had that before. So these are all the things that we're able to develop and build. We're going to have a presence on live action TV as well. We're building towards that. I think the fact that Disney marketing was in charge of the Avengers movie in no short order really added to this huge box office bonanza that we've had. It's completely unexpected, I think, on all sides, just because the Disney marketing machine got behind that. That's something we couldn't have done on our own. So far, you know, it's been an amazing, you know, really marriage with them, and everything that they promised has been exactly as they promised.
I never actually thought of that, but Cap and Thor were still under Paramount. Right?
Yes.
That was before Disney, so
Yeah.
Disney Avengers was the first big Disney Marvel movie. I never actually thought of that.
Yeah, no, and it was in a lot of ways it was you know, putting a flag in the sand saying,
Yeah.
this is why we purchased Marvel. We're going to show everybody why we spent the money we did on Marvel. And you know, because like anything on the internet, you know, Disney got flack, Marvel got flack, and I think they proved to everybody the power of what happens when you put both those companies together. Disney muscle, the Marvel brand, the Marvel creative, and away you go.
It's funny, I didn't realise how girly the Disney Channel was. Like, they have no boys programs at all. It's all Hannah Montana.
Well, that's what Disney XD is geared more towards boys action adventure.
Yeah, but before Marvel, though, it was pretty much a sort of
Well, no, I mean XD existed before Marvel, but now with Marvel there, they're hoping to enhance that audience as well. Because if you look at their programming, you know, they have a Tron animated show, something called Motor City.
It does all sound like crap next to Iron Man and stuff.
What was that?
It sounds like rubbish next to Iron Man.
But actually, they're pretty good shows. The animation on Tron is ridiculous. It's unbelievable. So, but yeah, so we're part of that block too. And we're developing more and more shows. We got several shows that we're already working on that we haven't announced yet. So don't ask me. I can't tell you. All right.
They're all going to ask you all the
I know. In the back over here. Yes. Yep.
Hi, just a personal wondering for whoever has any opinions on it. The Captain Marvel series is coming out, I believe, next month. Just if anyone has any thoughts on that. I think it's a long time coming for Carol Danvers to become Captain Marvel.
Yes.
And I think it's a positive thing for female superheroes.
Yeah, it's something that we had in the works for quite a while. I mean, we were always, we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years now. It was just when's the proper time to pull the trigger on the character. I love Carol Danvers. You know, she's one of my favorites, and the fact that you know, my daughter several years ago was watching Superhero Squad, and when she was watching Superhero, the first thing out of her mouth was, "What's Miss Marvel? Tell me more about Miss Marvel." So it's kind of near and dear to my heart. So when we started talking about making her Captain Marvel, it just felt right. You know, it just feels like she's the heir apparent to that role. So.
Right, and the author is Kelly Sue McConnell?
Yes. Yeah. Great
yes.
writer.
It's a female author
That
as
sounds
well.
like great country and western singing.
Osborne last year was amazing. It was one of my favourite minis Marvel put out. It's incredibly good. I recommend it so much.
And the artist is a newcomer by the name of Dexter Soy. He's a painter, a digital painter though. So, you know, if you like the work of like Gabriel Delotto or Esat Ribic or some of those big Marvel painters, Dexter does the same thing, but with a little more digital edge, a little more kind of, you know, slickness to it. It's beautiful work.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
The only bad thing is Jamie was involved in designing the costume. Obviously, Jamie McKelvey, my nemesis. So that was bad, but apart from that, it's amazing.
Alright, let's see the lady here. Don't worry with the microphone, I don't know where you at. It's okay, I hear you.
When the movies get round to Avengers vs. X-Men, how are you going to deal with Chris Evans' split personality and the human torch?
Well, there's several layers to this question. First of all, Chris Evans was not part of the X-Men, he was part of the Fantastic Four, right?
Just leave.
So that would be an issue. The second part of it is that the X-Men movies aren't produced by us, they're produced by Fox. So the chances of a crossover happening are astronomical because they do those movies, you know. But with respect to any, you know, the movies that Marvel produces right now are Cap, Thor, Iron Man, The Avengers, and we'll have a couple others. But there were several movies before we started a movie studio that we licensed out to other companies. Spider-Man's being produced by Sony, X-Men's being produced by Fox right now. So Ghost Rider also wasn't in Wonder Hours either. So
Just like something back, some of the others out there that eventually, like, there was a possibility like
Daredevil was still at Fox. When did we get back? We got back Punisher. Right?
Punisher back?
Yeah, Punisher's back. Yes, Punisher's back. So
Punisher's like great. Why is it all this shit?
The best Punisher movie that produced was Denzel Washington in Man
Man
on
on
Fire.
I drew the costume on the box.
Just about, this is actually me asking a question. Who owns Namor? I mean, who's got the rights to Namor?
it's not Marvel.
Oh,
Actually, I don't know. I should say this.
I think it's us because it's Star Wars Under the Sea.
Yeah.
Does that not fall into Fantastic? Oh, no, it doesn't because it predates Fantastic Four. So you're
I'm not the legal authority on this. So I'll get my words out.
Sorry, this is a private conversation.
Just talk about yourself. Gentlemen with the glasses, yes.
When Marvel sold the rights to the films to these different film companies, how did you allocate which sort of supervillains and sort of sub-characters were actually allocated to each of the films?
You know, that's a great question, actually. There are certain characters, villains, team members that are considered part of a family, right? So, for example, and usually that's designated by a character's first appearance. So let's talk about the Spider-Man villains, for example, right? That's a perfect place to start. If you know any of those villains that first premiered in a Spider-Man book are sort of considered Spider-Man-centric family villains. So my understanding is these deals really sort of predate my time there. But when these deals were worked out, it's like, okay, you know, when you know, if Sony is purchasing the rights to do the Spider-Man movie, well, what are they getting exactly? So you have to literally allocate a whole character list. And there's a master list of Marvel, things that, you know, we can do in a movie, they can do in a movie, and you have to keep track of these things. But yeah, that's really how it works. Same thing with the X-Men, right? The X-Men are a little bit clearer, right? Because anybody that's a mutant is considered an X-Men, regardless of where their first appearance was. So X-Men's a little bit easier to delineate. But yeah, there are lists that lawyers have that, you know, on all sides. Say, okay, these are our characters, these are your characters, and we can work in, you know.
Because Kingpin started in Spider-Man, but he's so associated with Daredevil. Do you guys have? Does Sony have Kingpin then, or?
Yeah, no. It's funny because there are some characters. Tell you, your head will explode. There are certain characters that actually are considered mutually held by different licensees.
Like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch,
They might be, yeah. You know, and when that happens, it sort of like just nullifies that character.
Yeah.
But I think when the deals were worked out, the Kingpin was considered a Daredevil, Fox character. So.
What I'm curious about is that the Avengers movie seems to be moving in a very cosmic direction, and a lot of the cosmic characters, to me, are tied to the Fantastic Four, which of course belongs to somebody else.
I'm sorry, what was it for example?
The Avengers movie seems to be moving, at the end of it particularly, with the Easter egg, seems to be moving in a very cosmic direction. A lot of the cosmic characters, at least to me, seem to be tied into the Fantastic Four, which belongs to somebody else.
Some are, some aren't. You know, the Silver Surfer's obviously Fantastic Four, Galactus is obviously Fantastic Four. But just because it takes place in space doesn't necessarily mean that it's part of the Fantastic Four family. You know, Thanos obviously isn't. Whoops.
I was so impressed here when you did the spoiler. There was so
Wait, hang on a second. Who here hasn't seen the frickin' movie? All right. Zero. All right, so amongst friends. So yeah, but again, it's all these things were carved out way ahead of time, so that there wouldn't be these issues down the road. And by much smarter people than anybody else. Yes.
I was just wondering about that and how do you can look at the games and stuff like that. Because for instance, the Avengers game that's on Facebook and stuff like that, that has like every character, every
Right.
Marvel.
All separate deals. All separate deals. And again, we're talking about things that are very detailed and very intricate in the sense that work out. And Mark, you've been working on movie deals, so you know a lot of this stuff, right? You carve out different things. This is what you get for the movie. This is what you get for video games. This is what you get for licensing of T-shirts. All that stuff is carved out and all part of one big negotiation. I personally couldn't tell you where all these bodies lie, but when it comes down to it, when you see certain things on, Marvel may retain the rights to gaming, a set of characters for gaming, where all those characters may live at a different studio, and yet we may not have the rights to do them in animation, or it's all, literally, I can go into the craziness and your head will explode.
Yeah, there's a reason why lawyers are well paid.
Yes, to keep our wheels spinning. All right, I see a hand with a blue sleeve in the back. Yes. There you go. Usually we're elevated, I guess.
Yeah, just not to go over the top on the movies point, but obviously now it's in a cycle of Avengers, Iron Man, Captain America 4. I'm just wondering if that's kind of detracting from making other Marvel movies that I've heard rumours of, like Ant-Man, maybe Runaways, things like that.
It doesn't detract from them, no. What we have to look at is that Marvel is a studio. We're still a very small studio. And our business right now is making tentpole movies. So, for example, I was asked this question earlier today. Do I have any favorite niche characters that I would love to see in a movie? And I have tons of them, but they don't necessarily fit our business plan right now. Our business plan is not to make small budget movies. Our business plan is to make tentpoles. That doesn't mean the business plan can't change a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. But with Avengers being the success it is, just looking at Avengers, we now look at our business plan and go, okay, what maybe we need to rethink some things. But that's the beauty of Marvel is that things are in constant flux, and we're very turnkey. So, whatever the audience is, wherever the audience guides us is where we're going to go, ultimately. So, what it does to other movies right now, it's too soon to tell. I think we have a big meeting coming up in another couple of weeks to discuss to once again discuss the movie slate and what we're working on. We have several movies in the works right now that I think people are going to be really, pleasantly surprised to hear.
Does any rhyme with Ant-Man?
What's that?
Does any of them rhyme with Ant-Man?
I can't say yes or no about anything involving our movies because, literally, like Marvel Security will swoop down on the ground.
Disney have got marksmen in the corner.
Down on the wires.
There's a poor girl who has a hand up for about half an hour.
Oh,
There's a guy pointing to the girl.
I usually notice the girl with the hair. Yes.
What do you say about films, this is from the board, which version, maybe not even in Mark, would you like to see becomes the features?
I'm going to use Scottish.
Yes, I am.
Translator.
I've said this before. One of my favorite characters, back from my youth. I should say this anyway. If you could have a character, a Marvel movie, yeah, just a character. Budget's not an issue. Low budget, high budget. What would you like to see on screen?
See, my tastes are really commercial, and it would be something like Avengers or
Okay,
something like that. But I think there's a logic to that, though, isn't it? That's why those movies get made, because that's the ones you want to see most. Like, you're not dreaming of a Defenders movie, the way that you dream of an Avengers movie. It's different things.
Who would you see, also personally, who do you see yourself in regarding comic book character? Like everybody sees a particular character.
Yeah.
Who is your character?
Scarlet Witch.
Me personally, I've always sort of seen myself as I vacillate between Peter Parker and Matt Murdock, Spider-Man and Daredevil. Something about the sort of Shakespearean drama of Matt Murdock's life, is a lot of my earlier life. where I was just like way too fucking dramatic for my own. But then the sort of the lovable sort of loser part of Peter Parker is the part that I always sort of it really resonates with me. You know, the humanity of Peter Parker. So
The combination's a blind loser.
If I could see, I'd love to see the New Mutants go on a big screen. I think something along those lines would be amazing.
They're $30.
As for character, doesn't matter either way. No, I think maybe along the lines of what you said is kind of almost Black Cat, but in the fact that she's so lucky that or Domino. I've just been very blessed with where I am and what I've gone through, and I was kind of associate more with the characters that just happen to step into shit.
Marvel character. Mephisto, probably. I think that's. Okay, more likely to be honest. I'm not quite as bad as Mephisto. I don't have the sideburns. That's the problem. Any Marvel movie? Oh my god.
why do you make Marvel?
I would just make a sexy name more movie. It'd be hilarious. Actually, Strange. It's not Strange. Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, actually, I didn't answer that part of the question. For me, I've always been a big fan of Killraven. I think that could be an epic movie. But you still didn't tell me what movie you wanted.
Actually, Dev's heard of Treasure Moore.
Just make a bet.
Avengers 2. Avengers 2, yeah. Because it's a show bet and I'll look really clever,
Thank you. Let's see. You pick one, all the way in the end, right here.
Stop that child. Somebody stop him.
Yeah, that's right.
He left an unattended bag. Get back here!
In the UK, it's quite traditional after a night out to go and grab a kebab. So why do we deny the epic kebab eating scene?
I haven't seen the scene either. I was at the Hollywood premiere, and we saw the Easter egg at the end, and the movie was over. We went to the after party, and then the cast split. They filmed it that night, right after the Hollywood premiere. So a lot of people haven't seen it. I mean, I've heard about it, but I have yet to see it. So you guys were denied, but how about this? You got to see it before most other people, okay? All right? You got to see it before anybody in the States, so suck it.
Maybe once I see that ending, I've got a pirate copy of it. So.
Me and some of the Marvel creators, we did that scene on our own last night down in Soho. So.
All right, let's see. In the back over there. Yep. You just.
That's the longest arm I've ever seen. Is that
Yeah, Mr. Fantastic. Now, the question I wanted to ask was around Marvel Man, Miracle Man. What's happening with Marvel Man? And as a little aside to that question, why does he not have the Gary Leach logo with the Marvel issue as well?
I don't have the answer.
Okay. there is stuff in the works, and all I ask people is just be patient. I can't really talk too much about Marvel Man right now, but it is coming. Promise you.
I mean, it's been 20 years. It's been almost 30 years of a legal issue. So Marvel are getting over it now by calling him DC Man. These things are always it's a cool. Should drug it. Yeah, these things are always if you think about it, the Marvel Universe is a 75-year-old entity, and it's a living organism, and every 5 or 10 years, things come along and kind of shake things up. Like Frank Miller's work influenced the Daredevil movie, Ultimates, a lot of the Ultimate stuff ended up in the Avengers movie, but it's an ongoing process, in 10 years' time it'll be something else. And our little period, like my period at Marvel, just happened to be at that point, really, So yeah, it's lovely, it's flattering when you see little things in it.
The Ultimate Universe has been so influential in everything that we've done. Now, mind you, again, we talked about the Spider-Man movie and the fact that the Sony movie. I haven't seen the Spider-Man movie yet, but my understanding is that they've taken a lot of influence from Bendis' run of the Ultimates. I just think that has to do with the fact that the Ultimates basically it's done what we set out to do back in the day, right? Where Bill sat in the table room from us, and we all challenge ourselves. If Stan, Jack, and Steve, and John, all these guys were in a room in 2000 how would they recreate the universe?
That was almost 12 years ago,
Yeah.
and like Bendis had a full head of hair. He looked like a rock star. It was
Amazing.
amazing.
And it was blonde. Platinum blonde.
His nickname was Tarzan when he
It
started.
was so beautiful. So beautiful back in the day. Well, that worked.
Weighed about 8 stones.
But you know, I also think the beauty of the Marvel movies and what Kevin and those guys out west have done is that they've taken the best of the best. They've taken the best of Ultimates, they've taken the best of the classic universe, and they've mashed it together into something that is accessible to the audience that knows nothing about what it is that we do for a living, but yet very familiar to the hardcore fan who's come in and expects something from us. And then Joss comes in and knocks it out of the park by providing a script that gives you every favorite moment from every Marvel comic thrown into this one movie. Somehow he gets it all in.
It's got to be Carol's name though, like Joss. I only know Joss Stone. Is there any other Josses that are there? It's quite weird. Joss Ackland, alright, sorry, he's got a voice.
Let's see.
Way in the back over there. You pick it, Griff. All the way in the back, far corner. Yep. Yeah, you need a mic. Sorry.
It's always sad when a title gets cancelled, but with which Marvel comic have you been most surprised that you've had to cancel?
God. I'll be honest with you. I haven't been knee deep in publishing in about a year and a half, so I couldn't tell you which one I've been surprised at that's been canceled. I mean, ultimately the comics, there are boom periods, there are low selling periods. We've just passed a bit of a rough patch, and I think things are starting to get a little bit better. So it's just rough anytime a comic is canceled. Because every comic is somebody's favorite. But can you think of one that really sort of hit you that you were surprised?
For me, it's Runaways.
Well, that's always to me that's always a surprise that
Runaways lasted that long. Exactly, it was bittersweet.
Yes,
Yeah.
But also the fact that Runaways is one of those books that we get tons of mail on. We love it, we love it, we love it, but that mail never really translates to the sales that we anticipate on the book. But that's true of a lot of books.
But it's always good though. That's what the beauty of the Marvel universe is. Even if your favorite character, your title gets canceled, you also have the characters that live on in other places. You're able to have different writers tell the stories and interact with different characters. Like the Runaways now are living on in 3 different books at Marvel, which I think is fantastic.
I'd love to take a beloved thing like that and ruin it. Like, see, like Brian Vaughan, he and I have had this online rivalry for ages, and I've just realised that he put his heart and soul into that book for 3 years, and I come in and just wreck it. That could be hilarious. That's my way to get back at it. Sorry, Sarah.